Hello, everybody. I'm Matt Anderson. Welcome to The Road Not Taken. How ordinary people got out of their own way, and you can too. I'm very excited about our guest today. It's Amanda Allen from Australia, the CrossFit Games champion. And so, Amanda, actually, if we could just start out with, could you just sort of briefly introduce yourself to those listening, to give yourself a little bit of background?
Yeah, I'll give. Thank you for having me, Matt. It's an absolute pleasure, and yeah, I'll try to introduce myself. I get lost in my own story often. So I guess in the last over the last 10 years, I've found CrossFit, and I've been to 6 CrossFit Games. So I'm a triple world champion, CrossFit Games world champion. I do have a bronze medal from the CrossFit Games as well. I often forget that even happened. I'm a top 5 finisher at 5 regionals, and that is after the age of 40. I discovered CrossFit at the age of 40. I ran 1,000 kilometres for suicide and mental illness back in June 2016. So that has been suicide and depression have been a huge part of my journey. So just trying to give back and raise awareness and start conversations. At Christmas, almost a year ago Christmas, I was in emergency a couple of times in the same week with no amount of morphine able to stem the pain that I was in, and was told that the doctors felt I had ovarian cancer. And so that was my Christmas present that year. But as it turns out, I ended up having emergency surgery. I've got this gigantic scar the length of my belly. So they cut me open and removed 4 kilos of tumours at Christmas, a few days before Christmas. And I was pronounced cancer-free, but did have a strange fibroid tumours that, well, I was riddled with them, but they were very rare, so less than 300 reported cases in the world. And that year I went on within 7 months to win my 3rd CrossFit Games title. So coming off of that surgery, I didn't expect to have abdominal function ever again, let alone to come back and finish finish first in the world at what I do. I think that's a fair summary of things so far.
So yeah, and I'd heard a little bit about that story before from Michael Kloster introduced us. So let's start with things for people coming into or listening to this, of course, that don't know much about your background. You alluded to depression and suicide, and so and it's actually just a good question to start with. But I know you had some really dark days, and so I want you to sort of talk us through sort of a defining day when you decided that you'd sort of had enough of feeling a certain way, a certain low point, and took a different direction. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Well, actually, and here you go, I did say I forget parts of my story. So I'm actually a recovering alcoholic. I'm 14 and a half years sober. So for me to get in, I ended up in Alcoholics Anonymous to basically save myself from my alcoholism. So every day is a blessing at this point. So your question was with regard to depression, yes?
Well, so some of the people I've interviewed on this podcast, in terms of how they got out of their own way, hit a point where they just couldn't where they just knew that they couldn't tolerate the pain, the emotional pain, the physical pain. And so
there's you reach a point, and I've reached this point so many times on so many levels within the context of very different things. But I just reached a point where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. Yeah. And, for me, when I finally admitted that I was an alcoholic and found my way into Alcoholics Anonymous, I was literally what's referred to as, I'd hit rock bottom. Mm-hmm. I had no further to fall, thankfully, and I was willing to do whatever it took. And, those times of incredible suffering are also times of the greatest opportunity. Mm-hmm. Most people won't change willingly. We go kicking and screaming, and I'm certainly one of those people who I have to take things to the nth degree before I'm willing to create or make change. And what I found over many, many years, because I'm 48 and a half now, is that, those times when I thought that I couldn't go on, I did. I took another step. I just did the next most important thing. And, I've just kept turning up, and over for decades I felt that I was a failure, or I was giving up. And, giving up is a strange thing, same as suffering. People say, oh, I've suffered greatly, and I wonder why we think suffering is such a terrible thing. Like, it's not comfortable, but it is fertile ground for incredible positive change if we choose to use it that way. So
you brought up so many different points, I'm not sure which one to start with, really. Let's start with the feeling like a failure, because I think that's something that a lot of people feel, and of course it's not something people ever talk about. So the point to this podcast is to basically have useful suggestions for people about things that they can do differently, or even on the inside, like things that can help them mentally. And you've started to talk about that already in terms of...
Yeah, it's a little bit like... failure and suffering, they have extremely negative connotations in society, and I think we're mistaken. It's like a mistaken identity. So the more you fail, the greater your failures, the more failures, the closer you move constantly towards success, if you like. And I read about a spiritual path called Not That. Like that is the spiritual, that's the way. It is not that. And I think my life has very much been a series of not that experiences. So I've had more jobs than you can imagine. I've lived in more places than you can imagine. Probably when I was much younger, I was like serial monogamous. So I've had so many, long-term partners. And but what I found, and I took a guru. I chanted 1,000 names of the Divine Mother in Malayalam every night. Like, I was always searching, and but you could also look at all of those things, and I started, and then I left them, and they were failures. I didn't see a job through, I didn't see a course through, I didn't see a relationship through, I didn't see a sport through. But what I was finding is that or the path, the guru, I let the guru go as well, because I learned from those experiences, but they were not that experience for me. Like, all of my failures have been constantly moving me towards that which is my path, that which is my passion, that which is my calling. So failures are this incredible, it's like a trail of failures that show you the path you took to find that which is greatest, the greatest gift you have to give and live. I hope that makes some sense, but it certainly made a lot of sense, and given me a real perspective that's been very positive for me to help me moving forward always.
Firstly, one of the things I've learned from interviewing people is that the people who end up getting great results, one way or the other, they end up looking at something differently than most other people do. So it's how they see things. So they don't see it all as bad, or they find a way to use it to empower themselves to keep moving forward. And obviously, it took you a long time to get to starting to do that. I guess one of the things I'm fascinated by is how, after years of incredible challenge, how do you be consistent with continuing to move in the right direction now, such that you're now an amazing role model to so many? I mean, it is a transformation. That's no exaggeration. How do you do that? Or that consistency?
Honestly, for most of, probably, I was 34 when I finally fell into Alcoholics Anonymous and completely given up. And really up until that time, and still beyond that as well, as I learned, all I felt was that I was an utter failure, and that I didn't fit in, and that all I'd done my entire life was gather evidence against myself. And the writing was on the wall. I was not right. I was a wrong human, a wrong energy in the world, that I didn't fit anywhere, and everything I tried was an epic failure, and I judged myself harshly. And that's most people's experience of life, right? It really is. And first and foremost, you've got to know you're not alone. You're not the only one having that experience, or having that dialogue with yourself, and coming up short, and finding that you don't fit in. Like, in fact, I'm so comfortable with that now, but being comfortable with that now at 48 is very different to learning how to live with that at 18 and suffering great levels of depression. And look, what I did was, the one thing I did, and I couldn't even tell you back then, over those first few decades of my life, I never gave up. And yet I felt in my heart that I gave up so many times and I wasn't worth success. But I read every book I could get my hands on, self-help book. Mm-hmm. I went to every kind of therapist you could ever imagine. Like, you imagine the most far out, strange therapy, I've probably done it. Yeah. And you know what I was looking for in every book, in every sentence, or with every therapist, is I wanted them to give me the answer right there and then, in that sentence or in that therapy session. Mm-hmm. And you know what? It never was that way. It was never the answer. But decades later of just desperately trying to solve the riddle that was me, and picking up the next book and going to the next therapist and trying to get up early or eat better, like, all of those things ended up contributing to the greater whole. You know, but I wanted the 1% that I found along the way to be the answer, and they never have been. But decades later, what I found is that it's a tapestry, right? Mm-hmm. Life and the answers and living and getting by, it's a tapestry that you never stop weaving. And I've got to tell you, I don't know if it sounds arrogant or what, but my tapestry is extraordinary now, and it's rare and it's beautiful, and I'm really grateful for it, and I never would want to go through it again, ever. You know.
Yeah. But it's still developing. So you always had a thread through you where you, and it's funny. I shouldn't act like I don't know this, because you mentioned it in your book, and I haven't read it all. But you said there always remained some like level of hope that you did always have.
I don't know why it's lived in me. I don't know why it's never died, because I thought when I finally got into Alcoholics Anonymous, I thought my soul had died. I thought that tiniest light that was left inside of me was gone. But as it turns out, it wasn't. We just have dark nights of the soul. And you know what? That's okay. Like, it's normal. Like, you look, the sun comes up, the sun goes down, the moon comes up, the moon goes down. You know, we need seasons to grow. Like, you know, plants have got to be savaged by incredible, storms to then grow stronger in the spring and the summer. And it's the same for us. It's just that we neither accept it nor see it, nor do we talk about it as much as we could. There's incredible wisdom, and, these are the natural cycles of life. And, I've really had to come to make peace with the depression and the darkness and the suffering. And that is a long, slow journey, and it's well worth it.
And are you saying then that making the peace, because you do sound at peace with where you are, and I'm assuming, and again, I'm saying this too, I mean, I've been on somewhat similar journeys myself, that, like, the constantly looking for the new book where you take it off the shelf and you read the endorsements and you think, I found it. And you eat it all up, and then within a week I'm raving about some other new book too, so I completely relate to that. What are some of the things that have helped you get that sense of peace? Because you talk about tapestry, I'm assuming it's a combination of lots. I'm assuming it's several different things. Can you talk to some of those things?
Oh my gosh, it's such a good question, and it's a huge question. Because today I would tell you that every single 1% of absolutely everything in my life is the answer to being well. And I guess over time, I started as maybe a 12-year-old reading psychiatry text, university psychiatry text, looking for answers. And, although I couldn't tell you what I read in that book, at 12 or 13, or that I know that something from that book contributed to the tapestry that is the answer today. And I've, over time, gathering those tiny little 1% into me that I didn't even know I had, it's built a foundation whereby I recognise today, and this is a quantum leap from, where I am today to where I was, but every single little thing that I do contributes to how I experience my world. So what I was having a shower yesterday. I was thinking how even the soap that I have in the shower is part of my 1% that make me well. And it may seem to have nothing to do with depression or being a world champion, but it does. Every decision I make about how I spend my time, or what I put in my body, or what I allow in my space, or what I allow into my brain. So what I watch on the, not television, I don't watch TV, but the screen, and like every single one of those things, when I go to bed, when I get up, how I'm with my puppies, like how I structured my day. There's nothing in my day, if you looked at it, you wouldn't know looking from the outside in that every single thing has its place for a reason. Like it's no coincidence that things are in my life today. I put them there, and I put them there by trial and error. I put them there because I failed so greatly that I was in such a state of suicidal depression that I never want to go back to those places again, ever. So when I eat, fresh salad for lunch with pistachios and Himalayan salt, and and I have quality protein at a certain time of the day, and I don't eat sugar, and I only have one coffee a day, and all of those things. And when I have that coffee every day, all of those things are there for a reason, and I've had to earn those reasons, and they lift me up.
So that prompts two really big questions for me in my mind, and one of them I've got to ask. Well, I want to ask both, but the first most pressing one is around pain, or around what you call suffering.
Yeah.
So it's funny, whenever I ask for people to make a recommendation for someone I should interview that they know, or that they've heard about, or they've read a book about, or someone, I mean, in some ways they think of the worst case scenario in terms of like someone's had a pretty extreme life experience and then gone on to do remarkable things. So my only concern about that is making sure, or is finding ways for people that haven't had a near-death experience or a cancer diagnosis, or they didn't break a neck in a water skiing accident or something like that. I mean, my concern is those people will say, I can't relate to that person because I haven't had, I had some people say, well, I had a fairly comfortable upbringing, and therefore, and the problem is then they shut out all the good ideas that are coming along. But my real question is around, do you think that to accomplish something as truly remarkable as what you have, does that require intense suffering, do you think?
And of course I can only speak from my own experience, and my own experience has been yes, to achieve those great highs. I've had to experience great lows, but I know that's like just athletes, say, who've achieved at the highest level, and they haven't lived the life I had or experienced the depths of suffering I have. It just seems to be that some people have to, and others do not. The most important thing with any form of change or positive steps to empower yourself is that you're very clear about your values and your priorities, and I have become very crystal clear about what they are, and those values and those priorities, I live them every day. So people plan their careers, they plan their holidays, they plan their families, but they don't plan their health, their mental health, their physical health. They don't. And I must, because my physical and mental health are the foundation for absolutely everything I have in my life and the quality of the life that I do have. So first and foremost, most people bang around life not really realising that thoughts aren't facts, feelings aren't facts, and thoughts aren't facts. You heard it here, right? I heard it probably a decade or so ago, and it was a revelation to me because I was a slave to my thoughts and my feelings constantly. Whatever they banged around telling me to do, I would just do. And what I've come to manage to achieve is to start to sift through, what are the lies? Like the mind is such a thief, right? It really is. It will just go banging around saying all sorts of things to you. And my job is to filter what is rubbish and what is lies and what is that thieving aspect of the mind, and what are the thoughts and feelings I want to have that are driven by my priorities and values for myself. And it's pretty much the way people run businesses, right? When you start with a mission statement, and you break it all down, and it's really doing the same for yourself and living that. So that doesn't necessarily require the kind of depths of suffering that I've gone to. It's simply sitting down with your heart and intuitively knowing what is it that's important to you. And look, most people I work with when on that coaching level of sort of lifestyle coaching or life reboot coaching, their priorities when I ask them to write the top 10 are just a schmozzle of everyone and everything before themselves. And then they wonder why life isn't, health and well-being and cravings and body weight and fitness aren't lining up the way they would like to. And it's pretty obvious. It's It's as simple as starting at the root, and the root is your values and your priorities. They must be in order for things to flow from there, and if they're not, there is disorder, and they are living it.
Are you also saying that too many people put themselves last? Is that what you're saying as well?
Oh, if even on their list of priorities, and women especially, they barely make their list of priorities in life.
Mm-hmm. So for the people that you've competed against that, you sense perhaps haven't had anything like as a challenging past as you, what kinds of things do you hear, or when you even coach people like that? What are they doing in terms of motivating themselves? Is that essentially what you just said? Is they have that clarity about what's important to them, and that's what motivates them or gives them that purpose to put than most other people do?
It's funny, I think it was only yesterday I posted something on Instagram about that, and about the Champion's Way and how they filter, what is rubbish and what is lies from what is true, and what are their passions and purpose and priorities and values. And those who haven't suffered as greatly, they obviously it's a simpler, clearer commitment to a goal. I know, like, I'm just dysfunctional, right? I'm as dysfunctional as they come, and look, most of us are, but not everybody is either. And I think it's just a simpler journey for people who don't suffer as greatly, who are achieving those high levels in, say, sport or whatever their field. They're passionate and they're clear about their purpose, and when they set a goal, they can work towards it. And I'm not that person. I've never. I think it was a Nelson Mandela quote, freedom through discipline, and I read that, I believe, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, really, and it was a revelation to me, because I'd fought my whole life against discipline and structure, and what I saw as being selling out to, I don't know, some great machine, but as it turns out, my greatest freedoms and joys have come through disciplining my body, my mind, my habits. And those people who aren't me have seemingly are able to get to that place much quicker, that freedom through discipline. They choose to, and then they follow through. But I was sitting with somebody yesterday, and he said he was excited to watch a surfing movie we watched last night, because he was looking for motivation. And I just I laughed inside, because you don't look for motivation. Motivation comes from the inside out, and motivation is setting your habits in order so that they are in line with your values and your priorities that you've become very clear about. So, for me, I have to turn up. I have to turn up at a certain time. I have to get on the assault bike and spend 10 to 20 minutes moving, and then I move on to everything in my morning is structured, so I've got routines and habits which are disciplines that give me the freedom to achieve and be all that I want to be. I hope that makes sense, what I'm saying.
Well, it's music as far as I'm concerned. What I also think about, though, is how, as you sort of use different language, but when I think, most people are, I don't know, it sounds silly talking about other people like they're not there, but most of us live on autopilot. In other words, we're not very conscious at all about what we do, what we think, how we feel. And it sounds like you've worked, I suspect, extraordinarily hard on this. So what tips could you give to people, and for me, it's top of mind, like how do people become more aware of the negative thinking that they've got, or just the autopilot repeat of thought after thought after thought? What kinds of things have worked for you to help you become more conscious of your thoughts and feelings?
Excuse me. Well, I think, unfortunately, I've been cursed with that depth of self-awareness that is so hyper, that I'm constantly aware of my thoughts and my words and the impact and the possible consequences. Like, I've just prayed for ignorance my entire life, and unfortunately never really experienced it. But the one thing that I see that makes a massive difference is most people are really proud of being busy. I'm so busy, I'm too busy, I'm busy, and I'm too busy. And it's like, I try never to use that word ever. And also that people often say they can't. And the truth is, actually, let's say 99% of the time, it's not that you can't, it's just that you won't. So even language is just is a place to start, because you've got to be honest. Like, if I tell you I can't do something, the truth is I probably just won't, or don't want to change, or don't want to do that thing. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought briefly.
Well, you started by saying most
Sorry,
people are
Matt.
proud of being busy, and then you said then sometimes it gets
Yeah,
to language.
yeah.
People take.
So stillness is a very uncomfortable place for most people, and I try to create as much stillness as possible, because my world's mad when I go outside the front door.
Mm-hmm.
But if you start to peel away the layers of busyness, school drop off, school pick up, or work, committees, bringing work home. I mean, life is mental. But most people won't sit still. So meditation is, it's been around for forever, and it is a precious act. But meditation can be simply turning off the noise, stepping outside the front door, and breathing. Or it could be sitting still, or just taking a walk out into a park. But stillness. Like, if you must start with stillness to start to hear what's actually going on. And most people who try to meditate find it incredibly uncomfortable, and all they have to experience is a lot of noise, a lot of thoughts, a lot of random thoughts. They're just running around the schoolyard, all of these thoughts, creating havoc and keeping things busy and keeping you distracted. So I've spent a lot, like I said, I took a guru, and I spent a lot of time reading spiritual text and trying to meditate and praying and using positive affirmations, in my mind. And I've also done a lot of floating in float tanks, so Epsom salts, magnesium baths where you...
I've never heard of floating. I saw it on your website, and I've never heard of it.
Oh my gosh, it's I would go twice a week for 5 years, same time, same day, every week without fail. The sun probably didn't come up if I didn't go to the float tank at 5 o'clock on a Wednesday. And things like, I use an infrared sauna, so again, I have a commitment to introducing stillness there, but finding a new reference point. Most people have no reference point of stillness or calm, and we're just fed and fueled by a level of consumerism that's rampant, and it allows for no self-reflection, no moment to be still. It just, whether it's sugar or whether it's, handbags, or, the next new car, you name it, there's always something to upgrade or to buy or to purchase or to go busy. I don't even like going to the shops anymore. I find it all quite too busy. I'll minimise my exposure to going to the shops just to stay away from that madness. And the further you remove yourself from the busyness, the quieter your inner world becomes, and the greater the opportunity for positive change and self-awareness and empowerment and growth. But again, I haven't found any of that easy. That's not an easy step to take, because our whole, when I stopped drinking, I didn't know another human being who didn't drink. I had no one in my world who didn't drink, and I had to find new playthings and new playgrounds and new play friends, and it was an entire upheaval of my very existence. And those things, those times are not easy or comfortable, but well worth it.
Yeah, and I can't imagine that part. So, but the mental toughness is something I want to ask you about. In other words, is there a connection between the stillness and the mental toughness, or and forgive my attempts to figure all this out on the spot, or as the stillness part, does that help you, as you said, with self-awareness, but also connecting you to what matters most, and that gives you more of the internal drive and, I suppose, centeredness, such that then you're willing to do those hard yards, as you talk about in your book. Because that's one of the things that awes me, I suppose, about reading about you. Is just I mean, I know what hard work looks like, but I mean, to do what you've done is, that's something else. So how can people become more mentally tough essentially to do the things?
I think it's a little bit like motivation, is that you're not born with mental toughness. We all have capacities within us that it really is up to us to harness, to anchor and harness. And I think my entire life, firstly, I'd been building evidence against myself forever. So I was not, things were not looking good for me. I'd weighed things up, and I was not a good person. But what's happened over time is, I think, fueled by that sense of not being good enough, and all of the evidence against myself, I've constantly searched for proof to show myself what I'm made of. Like, I have searched so hard for the evidence against my own evidence against myself. And every time, in the CrossFit years, each time I've gone into a workout, I've gone in to find out what I'm made of, desperately looking for some firm bedrock somewhere. But firm bedrock is built by integrity, acts of integrity, and learning to trust your own word and your own intention, because I lived most of my life up until my mid-30s and coming into AA wishing I could act the way I intended to based on my intentions. I wanted to be judged and valued based on my intentions, but my actions were a very different story. And I've spent the rest of my life trying to live by my intentions and with integrity in everything I do. And that in itself builds a toughness. It builds a trust. Like, if you can't trust yourself in any environment, in any circumstance, then there's weakness, right? So I've been constantly testing and pushing and exploring my capacities to discover that there is a bedrock in me, which is it is greater than any obstacle I've ever confronted. And I remember a few regionals ago that I finally knew. I knew when I held myself to the fire of the worst workout, pushing myself to be as good as I could possibly, to win, to give everything. It's like holding yourself in a fire. Like, literally there's a furnace and you have stepped closer than anybody else to that fire and held yourself to that fire. And what I found is that I didn't flinch. I haven't flinched each time I've turned up. And that could be a workout that nobody even saw in the gym, or it could be a workout at the CrossFit Games. But my integrity and what I hold myself to doesn't change, irrespective of the audience. And that integrity is the bedrock. It's become my greatest strength, is my commitment to be true to myself and my word, so that I can trust myself no matter what. Whether there's a block of chocolate in the fridge, that if I have one piece, I don't have the rest, or if I'm doing the most horrendous workout you could imagine, and I hold myself to a place that I truly feel I'm taking myself to my own death. Because when you compete at that highest level, that's what we're doing. No other animal in the world knowingly goes to its own death by its own hand, and yet I feel that that's what workouts are. But I haven't died, obviously, and I have held myself despite everything that my body and my mind and my soul screamed not to do, to stop. Like, even in a workout yesterday, I wanted to stop, but I didn't, because I made a commitment to complete that workout. Yeah.
So is it? I mean, you probably already said this, but are you saying then that it's a gradual process? Because again, it's gutting to read your book where you talk about that like Amanda fails and fails. I mean, some things you said, I mean, they were gutting, because I can remember saying things like that to myself as well. But it was also, I also just want to mention this to the listeners, because your book it's absolutely incredible in the way you write, you narrate your self-talk like you're actually saying it to yourself. Like, most books talk about it in this distant third person, like I was going through this rough time and this was happening. But when you do it that way, it just grabs you by the neck. And so it seems even more remarkable then that you're able to make this turnaround. But I'm going in that direction to say, like, because I've got to be honest here, I mean, I have this challenge. Like, I can push myself, but I know there comes a time, like, if somebody's not standing over me watching me do the workout, it's just, I know, I just don't push myself as hard. Like, I'll give it a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10 effort. Where somebody's standing right there, it's that pressure. I don't want to make a fool of myself. So then I will go to the 9, 9.5, 10. When I'm hearing you say, things like I didn't flinch, and that's what I know I do with tough physical tasks. So the first thought that comes into my mind is, how on earth did she make that change from somebody that was always giving up on herself? So are you saying it was a very slow process that you work on daily to kind of build
I think
that
it is
muscle?
that there is no overnight sensation. Like, isn't there a quote that the next overnight sensation was 10 years in the making, right? There's no great tree that grows overnight either. It's born of, a seedling in the dark, with no knowledge of what it is yet to be. And I really feel like I have been that, a seed buried in a dark, moist dirt that knows no light and no wind and no sunshine, and yet it grows anyway despite everything, and it grows upwards. It's in its very nature to grow upwards towards the light through the dark, and then it becomes, a seedling, and then a small tree, and the weather and the storms, and to be a great oak. It doesn't happen overnight. So if I'm a great oak, this great oak is like almost 50 years in the making. And look, it's not for everybody to be a world champion. It's not for everybody to push themselves so greatly, because most people that I see, they do have that off switch, and you do flinch. And that's okay, because I believe everybody has their purpose. And for you personally, Matt, it may not be to be a CrossFit world champion, but your podcast and your commitment to that, bringing that message, that may be your thing, and you never flinch with it. So it doesn't matter what the context. For me, what I'm describing to you and to your listeners, the principles are what are powerful. The context will change. Every one of us is so unique, but look at the principles and apply them in your world. And there's no right or wrong. Like, life is not black and white. I've checked. I wished it was, but it's not. It's all the colours and all the tapestry. And and each of us, I've made peace with the fact that I'm a strange unit with a massively intense energy that must be channeled to good, or we know from past experience it will be channeled to some bad stuff.
Can you talk about willpower? Because the more popular businessy type books in recent years talk about, or I should say, self-discipline as something that wanes like the battery on a mobile phone. And when you gave that chocolate example, that was the first thing that popped into my head. Again, is that too something you would describe as a muscle that people can improve on?
Absolutely. Like I said, every single 1% of everything you do every day contributes to creating that muscle, whether it be a discipline or a motivation or a commitment or integrity. Everything I do each day adds to, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. If I don't keep putting a piece in the right place, I don't end up with that beautiful image, whatever that is. So every act is creating motivation. Like, you're either building up or breaking down. That's it. End of story. So if you have a positive thought or a negative thought, well, it's one thing or the other. You're building yourself up or you're breaking yourself down. So my choice always, nowadays, well, let's say 99% of the time, is to build myself up with thought, word, action.
And you're helping a lot of other people as well as continuing to compete. Can you talk about some of the work you do with mentoring, with coaching, and also with that 1% course? Can you talk about
the 1% project? Yeah, it's really that's been created from my journey. And my understanding that every single 1% makes all the difference. So when I start, I've just started working. I've got 2 new clients this week, 2 ladies, and neither of them are going to be world champions or probably make the CrossFit Games, but what they're struggling with is health and well-being and purpose and levels of, insomnia and headaches and overweight, but they still want to do CrossFit and they want to be the best that they can be. And my job when I come in is like, we take everything back to ground zero. We review everything, do a massive assessment, and we look at what's going on in levels of stress and what hydration are you putting into your body, and is that water filtered water, tap water, how much do you drink, what do you add to it, when do you go to sleep, what quality of sleep do you get, what are you doing before you go to bed, are you watching TV, do you have positive relationships, are there issues in relationships within your life, do you need to heal, do you need to step up, do you need to let go, what's going on with your training, do you train in the mornings, is that the right time for you to train, is 6 a.m. right or is 9 a.m. right, and do you do school drop-off, and if you do, what are you eating before you go to school drop off, before you go to training, and we rejig everything so we can create the most optimal environment for whatever it is you want from your life to manifest. You know, it like we are the greatest, most incredible puzzle, and yet the principles are so simple. And so I have this amazing opportunity through my own research on myself and my achievements, but also like I've got a list of qualifications as well, that go into this, you know, this cauldron to help people create the life that they want, but that they deserve. You know, that high levels of energy and not suffering bloating and you know, lethargy and brain fog and muscle soreness constantly, like all of this stuff. Or, you know, every morning you wake up, you've got phlegm and you know, or you're always farting, or you suffer hemorrhoids, you know, ongoing. It's like, well, none of those things are actually, probably most of those things are resolvable by addressing little 1% on a daily basis. And I love the 1% because it's not wholesale change. It's a little thing here and a little thing there and another little thing there. They create this incredible achievement. Oh, the birds. You know, they create a foundation and they create a life. And I just can't stand the 8-week challenge or the 12-week challenge or the 4-week challenge, because it just leaves you empty and without any real significant change, or, you know, having learned anything about your own depth and integrity and what makes a difference. And I do a lot of work with people on tracking, you know, what's your mood, what's your muscle soreness, how's your levels of stress, your levels of hydration, what was your waking heart rate. You know, we start to track all of these things so we can see the patterns. So where you've had a heavy training day and your hydration's been low and you slept poorly, suddenly your stress is off the Richter, your motivation is down, your cravings are up, and we understand why, because we can see the patterns and how things interrelate. And, you know, that's my job, really, and that's my greatest skill.
Yeah. Now, for people that don't live in Byron Bay in Australia, because I signed up for your online course. This is slightly awkward. I mean, I have read some pieces. I have done a few bits, and I'm very, very keen to take it to jump in more seriously. So I'm not trying to do, because I think I know, but for people, because like, so in other words, but there's no interaction in that. But I also, as I said, but I know you work with people. So for people in other countries that wanted your more hands-on help, is there anything they can do? I mean, do you do phone?
Yeah, absolutely. I do a lot of online coaching, so we do a lot of you know, FaceTime or Skype time, and you know, I work with people all over the world. So the ladies that I spoke of, that neither of them are in anywhere close to me geographically. One is well, I've got a couple in New Zealand in the last couple of weeks, and another lady in another state. So it's not, you know, face-to-face is not necessary, and thank God for that in this modern day. It's a great gift to be able to access people, you know, like myself, from anywhere on the globe. And I always step up with people and we review, we have a chat, we look at where you're at. And my job is to identify the greatest areas of opportunity, you know, those areas of great weakness, and you know, we must recognise and celebrate the strengths and really bed them into place, and then we start working, and the process is, you know, it generally takes a good 4 weeks to integrate the 1% shifts. I don't believe in anything being rushed, and I love to work with people where we can take what is very much the nature of your life. So say you're a mum with 2 kids, but you want to do CrossFit, or you want to do a marathon, and you know, if you've got a supportive husband but you've got a difficult work environment, and but you don't like being up early and you like training at night, and you know, so I want to integrate what is naturally you, and then we manifest, you know, the most incredible efficiencies and opportunities within the scope of who you are, the individual. So the work I would do with you would be, although the principles would remain the same, the flavours and the focuses will be very different to, say, if I was working with myself or another, you know, woman. Or so it's a very unique and a beautiful process, and I love that once people start working with me, they realise actually how gentle and sensitive I am to what they need, and to make the process really rewarding and like peaceful and powerful. And very honest and real. It shouldn't be a scary process. We try to minimize that fear, the knee jerk you get from creating change. So it is such a gently process. And I wish it's the process basically I wish somebody could have given me 20 years ago. I could never find any one person who could help me with mental toughness and nutrition and supplements and what should I do about my recovery and, what about the stress in my life. There was no one who could bring all of that had the knowledge to bring it all together to help me cope and thrive, survive first and then thrive.
What excites me about what you're saying too, and again, I must admit, the health world is something I'm definitely not expert in. I know some enough to be dangerous, but the amount that you talk about with mental health as well as physical health. I feel like too many people just do little boxes on the topic of health. Just they might ask about what you're eating. They might give some lip service to a question around sleep, but that's as far as it goes. And I'm enjoying conversations I'm having nowadays more where people are talking about the broader picture of it. For example, this isn't in theory anything to do with health, but one of the people I interviewed yesterday, she's actually a fear researcher in California as her specialty.
Wow.
But she talked about this sort of pivotal day where she was in a job she didn't like, and she'd had this ongoing chronic back pain, and she said literally within a day or two of quitting this job and pursuing a job that she loved, even though it was a part-time risky job that didn't pay much money, she said the pain almost immediately went away and it's never come back. And this was 12 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
So even things like that, right? I just think there's not enough conversation about that, and that somehow it's normal that people like me should have acid reflux, or friends of mine have their irritable bowel syndromes or the chronic migraines or whatever it is. These are people I've talked to in the last couple of days, just as like off the top of my head examples. And then we talk about this like it's normal. It's just all part of being very busy.
It's incredible, isn't it? I get very excited when I start finding these things with people, when I start working with them, because these are the things that have caused them incredible pain and suffering, or draining them dry. You said irritable bowel reflux, and I'm just excited for people because I know very quickly we're going to eliminate those things. And it's not like I'm an expert at everything. If there are areas that I'm not sure about, I will send people off to have tests or to consult with another specialist. But I've been around the block so many times now. I know where to send people. I know what to do. It's the gift of it's the gift of the suffering. Is my gift today, to coach people to a far better place.
And I know we probably should think about wrapping up. I've just got to ask where you want to go, because even though you've not suggested this or I've seen evidence of it, it strikes me that kind of work you're doing is something that is so beneficial, and globally, and so not talked about enough. That I would love to see. I don't know if you've thought about certifying other people to sort of coach on how you do things or anything along those lines. But what are some of the kind of bigger picture goals you've got? You've already written, I've sort of say 5 books. You run a gym. What else is in the future for you?
Yeah, look, I've just started seminars. I'm doing tours around this country, been over to New Zealand, and I've got the States on the horizon as well. So a lot of seminars. So I'm taking my Alchemy of Performance seminars, which is really just talking about everything we've been talking about, how I'm giving everything I've got to give to people who are inspired to want to be better than they were yesterday. And I think this field, health is so everything is integrated with everything else. Like everything relates. There is not a thing that you can isolate and say just work on this. There's an amazing new series on Netflix at the moment. This One Strange Rock. It's narrated by Will Smith, and it is very much, I'm watching it, and it's showing the planet and how it is from the viewpoint of astronauts out in space, and how they see this organism, like the planet. Our planet is one giant organism. Everything, the dust from the Sahara, how it fuels and feeds life in the Amazon, and without that we would die, and we are the same. So every little thing, every 1%, as I've said, relates to every other percent and part of your being, body, mind, soul. So that is the only place that I've found healing, and that is integrating everything I know. And I'm a work in progress, as we all are. And it is a very exciting time for us to understand this integration and to be able to work with it.
So, no, thank you. So, okay, 3 final questions for you. The first one is, I guess since let's say your darkest day in your 30s, who do you think you've become?
I'm sorry?
Who have you
couldn't hear
become
that.
since your darkest days? What kind of person do you think you've become in the last 15 years?
Oh, you have no idea the person who walked into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous 14 and a half years ago, actually almost 15 years ago. You would not recognise that human, bloated, pizza face. I couldn't resist any kind of sugar. I couldn't stay true to my word. I lied. I cheated. I stole. I drank against my will. I wasn't anything close to what I am now, and yet obviously the seed of who I am was there waiting for me to water it and to fertilise it and to believe in it. And the person I am now is I don't. When I see catch a glimpse of myself in a mirror or a window, my soul doesn't break and my heart doesn't fall to my feet in just disgust and self-loathing. That's who I was. I was full of self-loathing and self-disgust and self-criticism. And today, as corny as it sounds, and I don't think it quite encapsulates it, but I really do love the weird person that I am, and that I'm okay with all of that. And the depression, I knew about that, but I only discovered recently that I'm an introvert, right? It was like, who would have thought? I'm such an introvert, and it doesn't have any negative connotations to me anyway, like depression. And I'm an introvert, and I'm proud, and I know how to look after that introvert now as well. And these things are exciting, self-knowledge, and then to really celebrate and to be fully, completely who you are. Be who you are and go the whole way, because there's nobody in the world who's more uniquely you than you. That's your gift, and that's that's what I've got. That's who I am. That's what I've got to give, and I should be celebrating that. And I am. I celebrate it, and that's simply by honouring it and nourishing all that I am today.
And so, based on that, what would be a good first step for people listening to just take another, one more step today for themselves to move in that direction even more?
The way I start a lot of my seminars is I get people to do a bit of a colouring in exercise, and perhaps I can send through to you this document, but it's just, I call it the Wheel of Life, and it's like a circle pie, and people colour in, okay, from 0 in the centre to 10 on the outside of that circle, those little sections of pie, is like, where is my hydration? Where is my mental toughness? Where is my self-esteem? Where is my body weight? And you give yourself a ranking and you just colour that in, and suddenly, and awareness is the place where we must start to create change. And most people, bumble along in a busy life unaware of what is actually the area of weakness and strength. So look at those areas and, do the colouring in, become aware, and then start down the path of what aspect or what area might be hydration. Hydration is a huge one. Is that this is a huge area of weakness for me, and I know it's going to give me maximum return on investment. So I'm going to start there by making a small change today. And for some people, I put an alarm in their phone every day for like 6 times a day so that they will drink, 250 mils of water, right? So it's these crazy little things that you have to do to create massive change. So I could be dragging myself out of suicidal depression, and that could be the place I start, right? I'm going to drink 250 grams of water, mils of water every hour for 6 hours through the day. Now, not too many people are going to start you there, but this is it. It's so powerful to create small change that leads to massive change. So self-awareness, and I'll send through that document for you if you like, Matt, that you can share.
Please do, that would be fabulous. And then lastly,
colouring in exercise for people.
Yeah. So, and lastly, how can listeners keep in touch with you?
Look, I'm quite active on social media. I really have been reaching out to people for quite a few years now and sharing my journey and my thoughts, my deep, dark, beautiful thoughts each day. So Amanda CrossFit Allen on Instagram and Amanda CrossFit Allen on Facebook and amandaallen.com on my website.
And then the Allen is A-L-L-E-N.
Double L-E-N, yeah.
Brilliant, very good. So Amanda, a massive thank you. This has been unbelievably inspiring, and I can't wait to sort of, I guess, go back to some of the notes I took so I can digest them more, and then I'm sure I'll be getting back in touch. Just have a couple extra notes here for listeners, and so the first thing I would like to say to listeners is, you know, try really hard not to put the people I interview on pedestals. There's people that you cannot emulate in any way, shape, or form, because I think if the testimony is clear, everybody's had their major trials and tribulations, and certainly Amanda's as good a case study of that as anybody else, and yet proof too that remarkable things can be accomplished as well. So, you know, start where you are, and just as Amanda was saying, you know, start with 1% at a time and small changes, and continue to do those things, and you too are going to start to see fantastic outcomes as well. And then lastly, thanks everyone for tuning in. Really appreciate your support and your interest. And of course, I really hope you got lots out of today. I can imagine that you did. You weren't listening if you didn't. Please subscribe to my podcast if you haven't already. Please leave a review.
I'm sorry, Matt. I can't hear you now. I apologise. I've just gone quiet.
Okay, yeah. I'm still here. So just saying that show notes are on matt-anderson.com. matt-anderson.com. Again, thanks, Amanda, so much. Now, I'll sign off with my favourite question, which is, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? This is Matt Anderson.